I want to talk a little bit about this incident that happened outside a cinema in Birmingham, outside the Star City complex. A few days ago, there was a mass brawl, and this came after the screening of the gangland film Blue Story. And this was a pretty shocking scene of violence, even by modern British standards. Apparently, 7 officers were injured, numerous arrests, including a 13-year-old girl, took place. And in one photograph that's being shared widely, one thug was holding a machete in the British city in 2019. Um, Shocking. Seasoned officers have said it's the worst violence they've ever seen. And I think with all the focus on knife violence in London, it's sometimes overlooked that our other cities, Birmingham, Liverpool, and elsewhere, are also suffering from this. So, in the aftermath of this incident, View Cinemas have decided to pull the film from 91 of its branches in the UK and Ireland. Showcase Cinema temporarily uh, pulled the film, but I believe it has reinstated it. Now, I've watched the trailer here of this film, Blue Story. It's supposed to be about two friends who they end up in a gang war because they're in different postcodes in different parts of London, and that's what much of London's gang violence is about. The so-called postcode turf wars. Um, Let me just say a few broader things about what I think of so-called art, and I say so-called not because I'm not saying this is art or not. I'm saying that this is the problem. Anything can be classed as art, and you can hide behind that definition to justify anything. Now, the director has responded in light of you defending their decision to drop the film, and it wasn't just with the Birmingham incident. Apparently, they took this decision after 25 significant incidents in 24 hours. 25. I cannot think of any comparable film. I know in 1971, Clockwork Orange had some examples of violence connected with it, and Stanley Kubrick himself had it pulled. And the Joker earlier this year also had some violence connected with it. But 25 incidents in 24 hours certainly is significant. And I simply refuse to believe that you'd have the same sort of situation with a film like Last Christmas or The Aeronauts or any host of other films. Now, the director has been on the defensive. His name is, I'm just going to read out a bit of the Sky News article here, if I can get it up. Um, Director known as Ratman. Bear with me a second. Yeah, the film's director and writer Andrew Onwubulo, known as Ratman, spoke out about the decision on Instagram on Sunday, calling the incident unfortunate, but saying that he hoped it would not reflect on the film. He said, "Sending love to all of those involved in yesterday's violence at Star City in Birmingham. It's truly unfortunate that a small group of people can ruin things for everyone. Blue Story is a film about love, not violence." There were also a few incidents earlier this year with the release of the Joker. It's always unfortunate, but I hope that the blame is placed within the individuals and not an indictment of the film itself. And of course, there's been the usual left wing chorus of, oh, it must be racism to pull this. Here's my take. Ratman also said, I pray that we can all learn to live with love and treat each other with tolerance and respect. Now, I'm prepared to play the devil's advocate. Maybe the film has a good message. Maybe it's about the futility of gang violence. Maybe it's about, that's sort of the impression I got from the trailer. It's about the futility of it. But I think that there is also a simple truth that gangs, young, predominantly black gangs, are influenced, for example, by rap culture. Now, that is irrefutable. Where are they getting that sort of image from if it isn't from rap culture? Now, this guy may well have good intentions with his film, and I'm prepared to play the devil's advocate for that. But At the same time, I understand View's decision, because you don't get this level of trouble connected with other films. So, what sparked that specifically, I don't know. But I find it hard to believe it has no connection. And people who say, oh, you can never blame art, I think they're being incredibly naive. The sort of people who say that have no problem blaming the government for everything. There's no problem blaming the police. They have no problem blaming racism. Oh, but let's blame everyone except thugs themselves. We have a very serious problem in this country, um, which is not yet comparable to American cities, but where, when you see scenes of mobs of teenagers running down High Street against an individual victim. There's something really chilling and primitive about that. And I think one of the biggest problems regarding gang culture in Britain in the 80s, when there were situations like the Broadwater Farm riots, there was problems with institutional racism in the police. I accept that. And I accept that that fueled tensions. But the problem is, ever since, whenever there has been a tough line on crime, there's always been this knee jerk reaction from some in the black community, which is, oh, it must be racism. And there's not a simple recognition that thugs need to face justice. I mean, even the word thug, we're starting to import some of the American political correctness that the word itself is somehow racist. Well, I call white criminals thugs as well. A thug just means a violent, aggressive criminal. That's what it means. It may derive from the Indian word thuggy, as in the thuggy cult operating in the 19th century. But if we keep shackling dealing with this problem by labeling everything racist, then it's never going to get solved because politicians, police, and other authority figures will be frightened to take action in case they get accused of racism. And that's unacceptable. I think it's disgraceful how Sadiq Khan has pandered to racial sensitivities ahead of public safety. And it's one thing about the Conservatives I agree with their vow to increase stop and search. Stop and search has been proven to be a success in many places. Now, I accept that if you have done nothing wrong and you stop by the police, that, it's not a good feeling. It's not ideal. But in the end of the day, the biggest priority for the police is public safety. And if stop and search means that some people are inconvenienced and maybe they feel resentful because they are innocent, but it also means that guilty people who are armed get caught and the weapons are taken away, that that can only be a good thing. And the idea that it won't be implemented because of political correctness, because of this idea, oh, well, it's only targeting the black community, I think, the police need to be given the power to use their judgment. If they believe that someone is a threat and they've got credible ground for that, then they need to be empowered to take action on that. I mean, we have this. What I find troubling is it's not just violence. We've always had crime, right? But for the most part, crime in the past had some sort of purpose, right? So if someone was being mugged, it was to steal something. Still terrible, but there was a purpose there. With the violence that we're seeing today, it's just violence for the sake of it. It's not always to steal something. It's just it's because someone's been disrespected. It's I don't mind admitting I find it scary. And as for the racial component, it's just a fact that there is a disproportionate number of young black men involved in gangs in London and Birmingham. It's just a fact. And facts they don't pander to political correctness. I mean, quite honestly, if I was walking through London at night time and there was a large group of young black men, I would look to find another path, right? You can say that's racial prejudice. I say it's common sense in this day and age. And if we keep getting shackled by political correctness, the sort of wanton thuggery that we're seeing on our streets, this mob mentality. I think one of the biggest problems, and this is something across the board when it comes to crime is our weak, incompetent judges. These idiots that it really makes me mad, to be quite honest, when you get someone who's clearly a dangerous individual who's given a tap on the wrist. Someone carrying a machete in a public place belongs in jail. Simple as that. And they all say the same thing. They all say it's for self protection. But if they're carrying it, they intend to use it. You know? So I don't buy that for a second. Also, the issue I have with this mentality that a lot of rappers seem to promote is, they'll get to this point where they were young offenders or they were in a gang, and then a bit later on in life, say their late 20s, early 30s, they get involved in youth projects, and um, they say, oh well, don't join a gang, it's bad, but they still have a fundamental mentality that everyone's fault except criminals themselves. I would like for once to hear a rapper saying, you choose to take a knife, that's your responsibility, instead of blaming the police, instead of blaming the government every time. Rappers cannot wash their hands of this. They cannot say they've got no responsibility. Where does drill culture come from, right? Where does this subgenre of grime, which is itself a subgenre of rap, come from? Okay, that is a very specific thing, and it specifically glamorizes gang culture. I'm sick and tired of this problem being deflected by yells about racism. I'm not saying there isn't racism out there, but the very fact that people have jumped on the bandwagon, say, oh, it must be racist that they've pulled this. No, they've pulled it because, like they said, their responsibility is in public safety. If other films were attracting this sort of trouble, they would be pulled as well. And this notion that art has no influence, cannot be blamed for anything, is pathetic. It is utterly pathetic. Yes, there are other factors, I get that. But if you are honestly of the opinion that art, that film and music as mediums have no influence on people's thinking at all, you're being very naive. Now, you might say, oh, what about, that's in fact something he has said, what about American gangster films? Well, if they attracted the same sort of, like, say, mafioso films, if they attracted the same sort of problems, then I would say they do need to be looked at. If this was a one off, maybe he would have a point. 25 incidents in 24 hours connected with this film. Clearly, there's a problem. And it may well be that he did have a positive message. It may well be that he was aiming to show the futility of gang violence, but that message was clearly lost on a significant number of people who came to watch this. He's saying it's a small number of individuals. That was a mass brawl. We're not talking about one or two people getting involved in a fight. We're talking about a significant number of people. A mass brawl. And numerous other incidents as well. This country needs to reclaim itself, its the streets from knife thugs. And we need to be hard headed about it. We need to stop pandering to sensitivities and political correctness. We need to be hard headed. We need to say, this is the problem, we're going to deal with it. Okay? Where there are examples of police brutality, that needs to be investigated independently. Absolutely. But you get situations like Mark Duggan, right? The career criminal, the armed gunman, the thug whose death led to the London riots in 2011. That's an example. Why did the black community defend him instead of acknowledging he was a violent thug? That's a fundamental problem. So more community leaders need to start taking responsibility and stop blaming everyone but problems within their community. This is what I find so galling. The regressive left, these woolly liberals who don't, they'll always try to find racism in it. But the statistics speak for themselves. Okay, and I think it is geographical. I mean, where I live in northeast England, most gangs are white. Most thugs are white. It just happens to be that in London, most gang members are black. That's not racist, it's just a fact. We need to start treating facts as facts and not as insults. But this mentality of just stabbing someone because they've disrespected you, or what I find particularly sickening, I would like to see a specific new law brought in to deal with gangs that target an individual. Because to me, there is something particularly sick, particularly disgusting, particularly chilling about a mob landing on an individual. I think that gang members who do that should be publicly named and shamed. I think they should be told to their face that they're worthless cards because they believe that being a man is behaving that way, and they need to be really brought down. They need to be brought down because they have this sense of power that they can go out there and stab anyone with impunity. And until we start reclaiming the streets, and to be fair here, there are people in the black community who know this is a problem, and they do speak out. An example would be young Damilola Taylor's father. He has courageously and consistently called for tougher justice. So this needs to change. This incident in Birmingham is really just, as ugly as it was, it's really just representative of a much bigger problem, which is wanton criminality. We need to call it what it is, and we need to stop treating knife thugs like they're victims. Oh, they're poor, misunderstood young men. If poverty, if disillusionment was, the main excuse for crime, a lot of people would be criminals. A lot of people would be involved in gangs. I think there are a lot of factors, but to say that media has no influence, so Rapman can sort of downplay this and say, "Oh, it's unfortunate. It was a bad incident." And he sends his love and prayers, but maybe he needs to consider, well, is there something in my film that is maybe influencing this?